Welcome to our next episode on Alexander the Great. We're right here at the Gaugamela battlefield, where two armies are gearing up for an epic showdown. On October 1st, 331 BCE, near the village of Gaugamela, two of the ancient world's greatest armies stood poised for a battle that would decide the fate of an empire. On one side, the vast, multi-ethnic host of Darius III, the Persian king of kings. His numbers were staggering. Perhaps 250,000 men arrayed on a massive, specially flattened plain, designed to maximize the impact of his scythed chariots and cavalry. Facing this ocean of soldiers was Alexander the Great and his battle-hardened Macedonian army. Outnumbered at least 5-1, Alexander's survival, let alone victory, seemed impossible. But Alexander was no ordinary general. He had a plan, a strategy so audacious it bordered on madness. This wasn't just a battle. It was a high-stakes chess match, and Alexander was about to make his opening move. As the sun climbed higher, a strange sight unfolded. Instead of advancing straight into the Persian horde, Alexander began to march his entire army, not forward but sideways, obliquely to the right. His elite companion cavalry, his royal guards, the hypaspists, and his infantry phalanx all moved in perfect, disciplined unison, almost parallel to the Persian line. This was classic Alexander, a move designed to confuse and provoke. He was drawing the Persian left wing further and further out, stretching their line thin. He was moving his men away from the death traps, the iron caltrops Darius had hidden in the ground. Most importantly, he was threatening to ride right around the end of the Persian army, to outflank them completely. Darius, watching from his war chariot at the center of his line, took the bait. He couldn't let Alexander just march off the edge of the battlefield. He ordered his Scythian and Bactrian cavalry on his far left to charge, to stop Alexander's sideways drift. A massive cavalry clash erupted on the flank. The air filled with the thundering of hooves and the cries of men as horsemen slammed into each other. The Macedonians were hard-pressed, fighting desperately against superior numbers. Seeing the engagement on the flank, Darius decided it was time. He gave the signal to unleash his ultimate weapon, the scythed chariots. A terrifying wave of war machines, with razor-sharp blades spinning from their wheels, thundered towards the Macedonian center. This was the shock-and-awe tactic meant to tear the phalanx to shreds. But Alexander was ready. As the chariots bore down, a miracle of discipline occurred. The Macedonian light infantry opened their ranks on command, creating perfect channels for the chariots to pass through. Javelins and arrows rained down on the horses and drivers. Soldiers grabbed at the reins, pulling the crazed animals down. The few chariots that reached the main infantry line were met with a wall of shields and a forest of pikes, the soldiers banging their weapons to create a terrifying din. The feared chariot charge, the centerpiece of Darius's plan, was a complete failure. It fizzled out with barely a scratch on the Macedonian line. Meanwhile, the cavalry battle on the right flank was reaching a fever pitch. Alexander fed more of his own cavalry into the fight, supporting his beleaguered vanguard. As Darius matched him, pulling more and more squadrons from his left to prevent the flanking maneuver, he did exactly what Alexander had been hoping for. A gap, a subtle but fatal weakness, began to open in the Persian line, right between the cavalry on the left and the infantry center where Darius himself stood. This was the moment, the decisive point of the entire battle. Alexander didn't hesitate. In a split second, he wheeled the bulk of his companion cavalry, which he had held in reserve, forming them into their signature wedge formation. With Alexander himself at the very tip, a gleaming figure of destruction, he led a thunderous, earth-shaking charge. They didn't aim for the flank. They didn't aim for the infantry. They aimed directly for that gap, directly for Darius. The elite Hypaspist infantry charged alongside them, securing the breach. The impact was cataclysmic. The Macedonian wedge, an irresistible force of men and horses, smashed through the thinning Persian guard. They cut a path of devastation, their eyes fixed on one target, the great king's chariot. For the second time in his life, Darius saw Alexander the Great, a whirlwind of bronze and fury, breaking through his lines and coming straight for him. The courage of the King of Kings shattered. Panic took hold. He yanked the reins of his chariot, turned, and fled for his life, abandoning his army to its fate. The sight of the king's empty chariot and his retreating banner sent a shockwave of despair through the Persian ranks. The center and left of the Persian army, seeing their king desert them, lost all heart. They broke, they scattered, they ran. A wave of triumphant Macedonians surged after them, turning the battle into a rout. But the fight wasn't over. On the other side of the battlefield, Alexander's left wing, commanded by his trusted general Parmenion, was in mortal danger. They were being hammered by the powerful Persian right-wing cavalry who had punched through the Macedonian line. Some had even reached the Macedonian camp in the rear and started looting. Parmenion was on the verge of being completely overwhelmed. He sent a frantic message to Alexander. "Come back. We need help." Alexander, in hot pursuit of the fleeing Darius, a chase that could have ended the war then and there, faced an agonizing choice: pursue the king or save his army. He made the painful but correct decision. Cursing his luck, he abandoned the chase and wheeled his victorious cavalry around to rescue his left wing. By the time Alexander arrived, Parmenion's men, the brilliant Thessalian cavalry, had managed to heroically hold the line. The arrival of Alexander and his companions was the final straw. The last resisting Persian forces broke and fled. The Battle of Gaugamela was over. It was an absolute, world-changing victory for Alexander the Great. Persian losses were catastrophic, numbering in the tens of thousands. Macedonian casualties were, by comparison, astonishingly light. The heart of the Persian Empire, Babylon, Susa, Persepolis, now lay open. Darius was a hunted fugitive. Gaugamela was Alexander's masterpiece, a symphony of strategy, courage, and perfect execution. He had faced an empire and, through sheer tactical genius, had brought it to its knees. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into one of history's greatest battles, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more stories of epic history. We'll see you in the next one.